I moved to the USA when I was 20 years old, originally to study at a university, but ended up staying there for almost 10 years. In this video, I would like to share with you 10 biggest things that surprised me upon coming to America. Let's check them out. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Konstantin and welcome to Letters to King. We're living in today's Russia explained by the insider you can trust. And if you are a returning viewer, then thank you so much. You're awesome and you rock. Please keep on coming back for more. I'm taking you back to 1996. I was 20 years old, I was a college student, and I had spent my entire life in the city of Rostov-on-Don in the southern Russia. Basically, I spent my life inside of my apartment and my neighborhood. I knew my city and rarely got out of it, just for summer vacation with parents. That's it. 20 years old, I changed my worlds from the Russian one to the American one. I picked up a gym bag. I had very basic clothing and I had $1,000 in my pocket. And just like that, I moved to the United States. We were having absolute economic misery in Russia. And I came to the United States and it was at the peak of its glory. And these are the 10 things that surprised me the most. And surprise number 10 is the biggest, the most powerful, the heaviest, the most colorful one. So please watch this video until the end to find out what that was. One of the biggest surprises, and to this day, this is a huge surprise for me, is the difference between Russian and American cops. I made an entire video on this topic. Check it out, the link is right here, but that's a topic worth getting in depth for. I was taught from the very early age that the police is not my friend. I was taught that by my grandfather, very wise man. I'm coming from the family of law-abiding citizens. None of my relatives has ever been arrested, okay? But still, I was taught that cops are not my friends. My grandfather was teaching me when I was 5 or 6. If I was walking on the street and I saw a cop up front walking towards me, I should have stopped, crossed the street, and kept on walking on the other side of the street. The cops were not on our side in Russia, in Soviet Union and in Russia. They were on the side of the government. They were not our employees. They were the government's employees, defending the government, forcing the government upon to us. When I first came to the United States, happened to be in Washington, D.C., I learned that cops were different, that they were there to serve and protect the communities that they worked at. I learned that they were not the federal employees, but the employees of the municipalities. And that blew my mind. I remember there's a thing happened that changed my view of American cops. Me and my buddies went to explore around the White House, and accidentally in Washington, D.C., we took a wrong turn, and instead of going to the White House, we went to the opposite direction. We ended up in a black district, like a real bad one. People were just drunk there in the morning and they were looking at us in a funny way, but we didn't know what was going on. There was a black cop and he saw us wandering, like he came to us and said, "Listen, what are you doing here? Are you crazy?" We told him who we were, there's a fresh off the boat. We're like, what? We're in America. He said, "Well, you're in Washington, D.C. in a bad part." He called a cab for us, put us in the cab, paid for the cab, I don't know, like $5. And the cab took us not far, but it took us back to our hotel. I remember it was Howard and Johnson. And we didn't really feel any threat coming from the guy, any danger. He didn't want to check our papers, but we were right next to the White House. Like, I could imagine if we were right next to a Kremlin in Soviet Union, we would be immediately stopped and checked for papers, identification, and stuff like that. And later, I ran into things like this with American cops. Many times. They are really there to serve and protect, whether Russian cops are to enforce the government's will upon the citizens. Huge, huge surprise. Again, watch my video. Link is right here. Another thing that surprised me a lot in America is how the students studied intensively and consistently. When I came to America, I had finished 3 years at a Russian university. Yes. We started our studies at the universities at age of 17. The education system back then was very different from the American one. If you find in this video interesting, please press the like button so my message gets spread more. That's really important for me. Thank you. We had 2 semesters every year, and each semester would consist of 10 to 12 classes. And our performance would be judged by one final exam at the end of the class. So what we did, we attended all the classes and we would write down what the professors were to say. And then we wouldn't study for the first half of semester. We would just, we were taking it easy. And then towards the end of the semester, towards the nearing the final exam, we would study like crazy, especially during the last couple weeks before the finals. We would just pass the exam. 1 grade, 1 class. So when I came to the United States, I found a totally different system. And when I was going through orientation session, people who were orientating us, international students, they knew about this great difference between Russian and American college systems. And they warned us right then. They said, guys, you'd better start studying from the day one and continue until the day last, because what you're doing in Russia is not going to fly here in the United States. When I faced American educational system, I clearly saw the difference. I had to study every day. For every class, for every hour spent in class, I had to spend 2 to 3 hours at a library or reading a book at home, And at first it was very difficult. Well, I managed. Another surprise was how badly Americans dress. The way that most Americans, regular people, are tailored did not really impress me, and it still does not impress me. You see, there's a huge difference between how people dress in Russia, in Europe, even in French Canada, and in the United States. Well, I can't even explain what this is all about. If you have ever been to France, to Italy, to Europe, even to Russia, you know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. People pay extremely important attention to the way they're dressed here. We'd rather not eat, but save money and to get ourselves nice outfits, expensive clothes, designer clothes. We like to look sharp. We like to look good. And it's a huge, huge thing in Russian culture and in European culture, because I think we're getting it from Europe. I remember I came to Maine, which even in the United States is not the most fashion and trendy place. I first saw a girl coming into a restaurant, Denny's, wearing pajamas. I could not believe it. I thought it was like a Halloween or something like that, like a dress up. But no, she just woke up and she wore her pajamas into Denny's, and she was a fellow student. And that certainly I couldn't understand that. I was like, what? I spent 10 years in the United States, and you know what? I became tolerant, very tolerant to things like that. I still dress sharp, but I don't really care what other people wear. But this was a huge surprise for me, and such a striking difference between Russia and the United States. Another huge surprise about America and American way of life is that Americans do not eat liquid foods. Oh my God. You see, I was growing up in the USSR, and for the first 20 years of my life, I ate liquid foods, soups, noodles, borsches, every single day for 20 years. There was an absolute knowledge in Russia that if you don't eat soups, borscht, at least once a day, bad things happen inside of you. The best thing that would happen is stomach ulcers, and the worst, you die. You just drop dead. And I'm not kidding you. A lot of Russians still think that eating liquid foods at least once a day is like the foundation of healthy and long life. So who were I to go against collective people's wisdom? And of course, I ate liquid foods at least once a day. Then I came to the United States and I lived at a dorm for 1 year. We had a cantina at the dorm, and the first day I came there, food was pretty good, very unusual, very new to me. There were lots of different things, but there was one thing missing: the soups. There weren't any. So I finally came to the manager of this cantina. I said, where are the soups? He looked at me, he said, well, they're not really popular. We don't have any. I was like, what? You don't have any soups? Oh my God. What do I do now? I was really nervous about that. So I started asking my fellow students living in the dorm, do you get stomach ulcers a lot? How do you treat them? And I was so surprised to learn that none of the persons I asked even knew what stomach ulcers were. Then I started thinking that something must be wrong, you know, because in Russia, like, half of people I knew had some kind of problems with stomach, and the most common problem was ulcers, stomach ulcers. We all ate soups. In the United States, no one ate soups and no one had ulcers. Put in two and two together, you know, and I figured that it kind of works a different way, opposite way. Certainly was a shock. Options for people with disabilities. That was a very big surprise. In Russia, I had hardly seen any people with disabilities, and they weren't any options. And I mean nothing for people with special needs. I hadn't even known that, you know, people like that existed. I mean, I heard of someone in a wheelchair, of a person or two, but when I first came to the United States, everything was full with options. Public places, airports, bus, railroad stations, universities, even apartment buildings, new apartment buildings, everything was tailored for people with disabilities. And I saw people with disabilities everywhere. They even had jobs at like fast food restaurants and public places. That was mind-blowing. Something we did not have in Russia. That was back then. Now things have changed and we have new building codes. When they build something, they must provide for people with disabilities. But still, even though access for disabled people is much easier now in Russia, it's nothing compared to the one in the United States. Another huge surprise is how many there are beach balls in the United States. On every corner, everyone has a beach ball. No, I'm joking. Another huge surprise was American cuisine, or should I say a mix of international cuisines available in the United States. I had grown up in Soviet Union, place where we did not really have that much of food in general, and the food that we had was, how should I say, limited variety, or no variety at all, just the staples, the basics. Russia from 91 to 96 was a bit better. We had very basic, same cuisine as we were used to. So when I flew to the United States, I was absolutely shocked by different cuisines. I immediately fell in love with it. Different flavors, different spices, different colors, different sensations, different everything. Mexican, Indian, Japanese, Chinese, European, French, Italian. Oh my gosh, my mind was exploding. I loved it. I enjoyed every single bit of different cuisines, different foods. That's amazing. Back then it was a huge surprise for me. My question of the day is, have you been abroad, and did you run into something that surprised you a lot compared with your own country? Please share down below in the comments. Would be really interesting to know. People smiling and apologizing in America. Guys, you better believe it. I was not ready for that. I mean, I had heard that Americans smile a lot. I had read about that. I was kind of ready, but you know what? I was not ready. Because when I first came, I couldn't believe how everyone around me was smiling. I wasn't used to that. We hadn't smiled much in Russia. We still don't smile. If you want to know why Russians don't smile, watch the video. The link is right here. But the fact is, Russians don't smile as much. And Americans do smile all the time. And to every Russian who comes to the United States for the first time, it's a huge shock. Another big thing is how often Americans apologize. Someone walks past you, apologizes. I'm sorry. Someone, you make an eye contact with a person, that person immediately tells, well, I'm sorry. God forbid someone touches you 5 times. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's sorry all the time. In Russia, no one is sorry. We push someone with the shoulder when we walk by. Oh, it happens, We're not sorry about that. It's life, We better live with it. Big shock. Smiles and apologies. Another big surprise for me was that Americans treat common cold with cold. That went against everything I had known about medicine and how to treat colds. I did not get sick that often, and the first time I learned that Americans treat cold with cold, my wife got common cold. Well, Maine winters are very, very cold. They remind me of Russia very much. So she got cold, she had sore throat, and she just had a popsicle right out of freezer, and she started, sucking on a popsicle. What in the world are you doing? And she looked at me very, very surprisingly, like, what's wrong? I said, you're gonna die. You don't do that. You avoid colds at any cost when you're sick, because it's gonna make you so much worse. And she looked at me, and she was going to school to become a registered nurse, and she had worked in the medical field for pretty much all her life. And she was like, what did you just say? Then I learned that doctors recommend, when you have sore throat, inflammation in your throat, eat ice cream or popsicles, so that inflammation is treated with cold and, shrinks. Well, you already understood, that in Russia, we never treat cold with cold. We always treat cold, common cold, with warm. You have to inhale steam, or you have to drink hot liquids, tea, plenty of tea, hot water, water with lemon, and all kinds of stuff. But all liquids, but they must be either warm or hot. So that was a huge surprise for me to learn that Americans treat colds with cold. How much and how hard Americans work was another big, huge surprise for me. Completely different cultures. Russians want to make money by not working much. A good job is considered the one where they pay you, but you don't really sweat doing this job. In Russia, we say they pretend that they pay us, and we pretend that we work. On the contrary, in America, it's completely different. I actually discussed it in depth. I made a video that is called How I Fell in Love with America, an Immigrant Story. The link is right here. Check it out. Americans work. No one slacks. If you are hired, they expect to get results from you. You work every single minute, and someone checks on you. In Russia, no. In America, people are paid by hour. You work 40 hours, you get paid for 40 hours. You get sick, you don't come to work, you don't get paid. In Russia, it's a completely different story. You paid a monthly salary. In reality, I have never seen anyone work as much as the Americans. I'm warning all immigrants who want to come to the United States and live there. Guys, get ready for hard work, because that is the requirement of a happy life in the United States. That surprise was actually a very pleasant one, because I love hard work. I like to work a lot and hard, and I love making lots of money. The first, the most powerful, the biggest, the heaviest surprise was how high living standard in America was compared to Russia. I was coming from economic misery, from the remnants of Soviet Union. Russia back then was a young country with non-existent economy, with mafia, with basically a fantastic salary was $100 per month. Then I came to the United States, and I immediately, right at the airport, I saw excess. I saw luxury. I saw consumerism. I saw people, regular people, school teachers, doctors, workers. Those people in Russia would be on the very bottom of social pyramid. But in the United States, they were up high. They were well off. They were driving nice foreign cars. They had money to spend. They went out, they bought houses, they vacated. Everything was so colorful, so rich, so incredibly expensive. And people were fascinatingly making tons of money, all people. And that was a huge surprise that almost knocked me right off my feet. That was 25 years ago. Since then, I have seen things, I have tried things, I have made money, I have spent money, but thinking back, that was the biggest, the hugest,